us, Opio, who is a friend to all of us. I think before I proceed, let's welcome him with a very big hand clap. Our organizers were very, very pleased when he committed himself to come, and he came on time. Thank you for keeping time, Mr. Opio.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Opio is a human rights and constitutional lawyer. Nicholas Opio is also the executive director of Chapter for Uganda, which is a civil liberties organization. He is the immediate past Secretary General of the Uganda Law Society. Our guest speaker tonight to talk on this fundamental topic of the challenge of what some people see as raising insecurity in our country. Unfortunately, we have had the incidents which are unique to this country, which have been unique to this country for some years. You hear attacks, people have died here and there. The unfortunate incidents in the Rwenzori sub-region, then the Chegegwa, Mubende, and also one of our colleagues here, who is our partner in this debate, Mr. Katomkasa. His organization, Aleya, was also raided and property taken. And then the Askaris found unconscious in some NGO here in Bukoto. The Askari was found dead. I wanted to briefly state that as we all know, just this is a kind of repetition, because when talking this forum, you are up saying what everybody already knows. But security is a very pertinent issue. We all know that it is a non-partisan aspect, and it is so serious that when you're talking about security, you're talking about either a life will be protected or a life will be lost. So I therefore want to request ourselves that we give it the seriousness it deserves. So thank you very much, Mr. Kato and members. Good evening, sir.
Thank you very much. Thoughts on this very delicate topic. I'm just here to share with you the things I have been researching over the last 2 months. First, because of the nature of my work, defending human rights and civil liberties. But secondly, because of a personal reason. Many of you recall the story of Mr. Andrew Rajkara, a lecturer at Good University, who was shot dead inside his own compound at about 9 o'clock in the evening. He was shot only about 200 meters off my father's house. I went to primary school with Rajkara, I went to secondary school with Rajkara. So I took up this matter because of him, but also because the family had asked me to offer legal support to the victims in ensuring that the perpetrators of that crime were brought to book. So I will share with you these findings. They are preliminary findings, they are not final. This work is continuing because it's delicate. So I will try and be as candid as possible. If anybody is hurt because of what I'm going to say, I do apologize in advance because I want to be candid. So I'll discuss these things in 2 respects. The first is just make some broad recognition and some broad discussions about what I think is the bigger problem of the security sector in Uganda. I will then go to the specifics and discuss with you what I think is a problem that has been happening in northern Uganda. Many of you perhaps don't really know about it, but there was a sudden spike of gun-related crimes. It began from the Lamu sub-region and now has spilled over to Acholi sub-region. General Kale Kaihola has been in those places to try and, as usual, put up a fight. I will then discuss what I think are the preliminary findings and what is happening in western Uganda. So let me start quickly by stating what I think are the broader security problems in Uganda. First, is all of us remember in 2001 that President Museveni ran on the tagline of trying to modernize the army. Okay? All of us recall that he asked for another term to make the army more professional. Indeed, after the election, the process of reforming the UPDF was kick-started. As a result, You had the first white paper on national security. The only thing that you haven't been told about that reform process is that it was a huge cosmetic reform process. That one, reformed the structure of the UPDF, but also two, had a huge infusion of graduates who then became the core of the army. Most of them were recruited, if you recall very well, by the president's son while he was at the university as I think the president called him LDU. He was LDU at Makerere. He recruited many of these young chaps and encouraged the young people to join the army. Now, to the extent that graduates became the dominant number in the UPDF, at least in the hierarchies and at officer level, it's a good idea. And to the extent that you have had new systems, you now call your army commander CDF, you have a commander for land forces, you have a commander for aviation. To that extent, it's a useful thing. But the only thing that you haven't been told is that the core of the army, the core philosophy of the army that came to Kampala in 1986 remained unchanged. And therefore, that reform, what the president likes to call ideological orientation of the army, has remained the same. So you basically have an army that still operates with the ideology of the post-war group, but now under the auspices of the aegis of the national force. Admittedly, that process takes time to change the ideology, but that problem has remained within the UPDF. And if you had time, we could go into the details. The second broad discussion that I want to present to you is the question of the police reform. Many of you don't even know that there was a police reform process. But in about 2009, owing to the pressure, the police succumbed to what was supposed to be an overhaul of the Uganda police force. That process was funded to the tune of $1 million. I know this because I was hired by the American Embassy and the Dutch Embassy as a consultant for that process. So that process began with what was supposed to be a feasibility study to identify the problems within the police force. The feasibility study came up with very interesting findings because they were done by very independent people. First, that the Uganda police force needed urgent reform to make it a more democratic, a more pro-people and accountable police force. The second stage of that reform process was then what was supposed to be a national consultation process. And that is the stage at which we took part as consultants. The national consultation process went all around the country collecting views from police officers, from the lowest rank to the highest rank, and also from ordinary members of the public, civil society organizations, and different stakeholders. We spent 6 months traversing the entire country collecting views, the result of which was nearly 2,000-page report and recommendations for what would have been an exhaustive reform of the police force. Now, the intention to reform the police force, I must note, was not as a result of perhaps a change of heart or an appreciation for the need for reform from government. Rather, it was an imposition of the donor community who funded this process. Many of you know a lady called Esther Lofen. She used to be the first secretary of the Royal Liberals Embassy and the chair of the donor government group on human rights and justice. They superimposed this reform process on the police. And the problem with that then, therefore, is that there was no buy-in. As a team of consultants, we insisted on meeting Kale Kaidera. We couldn't for 4 months. He just didn't want to meet us. We insisted on meeting the president to discuss the police reform. We couldn't. He didn't want to meet us. Perhaps he was busy. The only person we met was Aronda, who late into the night at his Wampro Avenue office sat with us and discussed what he thought were lessons the police could learn from the army reform. So this reform process then was aborted, and here's the reason for the abortion. The reform process of the police was then supposed to give way to a roadmap for actual reforms, the details of the reform of the police, on what should have been done to ensure the police is a profitable police force. It was aborted simply because of two reasons. First, the police put together a team of what they call the Reform Steering Committee, headed by the former AIGP. His name was, I forget his name, he's from Bushenyi, I think. His name is, well, I forget his name, but he's the past AIGP. If I recall his name, I will tell you. Some of the committee members included people like Dr. John Kamya, many of you know him. It had people like the spokesperson of the land forces in the police. I found Kaima, a million. It had very eminent officers. Now that process aborted because the team from the police insisted that we change the report because allegedly the IGP wouldn't be happy with the report. Because among the key recommendations were, one, that the police must be headed by a professional police officer, that there must be clear distinction between the army and the police. So when the effort to tweak or to change or to doctor the report, the national consultations failed, much definitely the report therefore didn't gather a lot of confidence in the police force. It was thus aborted. And so in the end, therefore, you have a police force that is ad hoc, that is still operating on the old police philosophy. The philosophy, just to give you one example, is that the police here believes in arresting before investigations. Okay? We arrest you for God knows what, and then investigate later. Charge you in court, remand you, that philosophy still exists in the police. Now, several things remained unchanged, and the police is now what you have. The third general broad structure I want to paint is the question of what I think is the continuing privatization of security and the security economy. Now, this is a dark, opaque area where nobody wants to go because you don't know about it, no one wants to tell you about it. I can tell you confidently there are more private security guards in this country than police officers. Security is being privatized for money, the result of which then is you have people from sadly speaking, from my region as your gatekeepers who keep your houses. Many of these are boys who have terrible problems. You don't know where they sleep, but they guard your house if you bother to see where they stay. So there is the increasing privatization of security to the extent that the broader day-to-day security of the people in this country is being provided largely by private security organizations. Forget about the macro picture of territorial integrity, defending this country, the army, the PDF, but the broader security in this country is being provided largely by the private security organizations. Now that has given rise to a security economy that is very lucrative in the hands of a few people, but also become a breeding ground for crime. I mean, the reasons are structural. So you have a police force that is, say, about 50,000 men and women, supposed to supervise private security organizations that are in excess of 100,000. So you wonder how the police can supervise them. So that has given rise to a structural problem and therefore a breeding ground for crimes. So those are the broad arguments I want to paint. Now let me just go back now and discuss the specifics of what happened in northern Uganda and what I think is happening in western Uganda. The first is that if you follow northern Uganda carefully, you realize that at certain points in time, there's a spike of gun-related crimes, then it goes down. What follows those allegations, those incidences are normally arrests, prosecutions, and allegations of new rebel groups. That is the pattern. The Honorable Regan of Kumu, Michael Tula, the former MP for Gulu Municipality, you probably know his name, Pelito, were charged with prison. Again, after a spike of urban gun-related crimes, then later blamed on new rebel groups that are never found eventually, and that these charges are eventually all dropped. All of you know that none of these cases are gone to court. What then is the problem in northern Uganda? Three key things. The first is that at the height of the rebellion, big men, and I will mention names without fear, created militias. These militias were armed by the state. Okay? And I'll give you names. If you go to Amuru now, the chairperson of Pabosa County has a militia armed by the state, wreaking havoc now. In the past, the intention was to keep law and order, peace and security, but ever since the war ended, they haven't been disarmed. They are now cutting people's private forests, involved in land disputes. The chief of logistics of UPDF, who was for a long time the intelligence chief of the 4th division in Gulu Town, has a loyal following of people who have guns armed by the state. The former RDC of Gulu, who now is the RDC of Amuro, has a group of people who we now know have guns in their hands, unregistered guns given by the state. So you have these private militias that have not been disarmed by the state, and therefore have become the conduit point for crime and gun-related issues. The second question is the political question in northern Uganda, that in a way is related to the first argument of powerful men having militias. And you can go around northern Uganda. You go to Abiriga in West Nile, you go to Mike Mukula's on the group in Cheso. They have private militias, never demobilized. They have guns, you don't know what those guns are doing, you don't know who has which guns, and these militias keep evolving, keep morphing. I chase you from my group, I get somebody else, and hand over the gun. So that has also created a fertile atmosphere for settling political scores. Okay? So if you want to get rid of perhaps a group that is emerging as a powerful group, what you then do is frame them, cause problems, kill a few people, and arrest these people, and then that matter is resolved. That particular group is silent, that particular rising 24-hour center is then addressed. Have deep connections with South Sudan. People just move back and forth and do whatever they want. And fourthly on that point is the creation of what you call cadres, what we call them informants. Okay? Informants. The people who hang around the RDC's office. You don't know what their rank is, what their job is, but they have guns, and they're the people who are wreaking havoc in northern Uganda, and in many cases killing people, attacking shops, attacking all kinds of people. But that overall problem has to put in context of post-war northern Uganda. People who have come back from rebellion. My own sister was arrested or abducted by the LRA, spent 8 years in rebellion. And lucky enough for her, she made it back. She walked all the way from South Sudan into Gulu Town. Thank you. There are many such people who have returned with unnoticed, unreported, and with guns, and therefore have been the cause of insecurity. Let's talk about northern Uganda. Let's now see what I think is the bigger problem happening in western Uganda. We have a team of people there who are clandestinely, and I can't tell you where they are because you know why, putting their ears on the ground to understand what the problem is in western Uganda. Admittedly, the problem is complex, and I can't claim I have answers, but I can draw similarities. In 2009, you witnessed what many of you refer to as the Uganda riots. In my own view, that was not a Uganda riot, it was a Uganda rebellion. And this is why. Preceding the Uganda rebellion, many of you refer to them as riots, were the new kingdoms where they never existed. Okay? In Kayunga, a new kingdom was created. I think in Nakasongola, a new kingdom was created. What is common with the creation of kingdoms in Uganda, as is the case in northern Uganda, is that these new kings are all former army men Okay? So you retire them and make them kings. The intention is to demobilize powerful alternative power centers in Uganda, the Uganda Kingdom, in Western Uganda, the Rwenzururu Kingdom. So what you then do is that provokes a sense of ethnic nationalism, if that word exists. The Baganda love their kingdom, and therefore any such effort is then viewed as an attack, an affront in their kingdom, giving rise to popular tribal nationalism and a sense of solidarity, and the result of which is what happened in Uganda, which was, I think, in my view, a 2 weeks rebellion, which was suppressed by the state. You know what the state did, and there are still families who are waiting for justice. In Western Uganda, definitely there has been a similar problem. You cannot discount the impact of the creation of the new kingdom. I think he's a major Kamia. Isn't Kamia in Uganda? No. The king there. I don't know what Kamia is.
So that is a Uganda Spanish.
No, I like in Uganda, but the fact that there is a Kamia, retired army man, installed, spiked, so exacerbated what was an ethnic tension, a simmering ethnic tension, and then blew out of proportion and led into perhaps or contributed to what you see as a crisis now in Western Uganda. The second problem in Western Uganda is again a failure of the policing in this country. All of us do remember very well how Kale Kaihura pitched camp in the area a few months ago in an effort to resolve the crisis, to tame the ethnic tensions. Whatever happened to Kale Kaihura's mission, it seems now clear was a catastrophic failure because it was unable to stop what had happened in Western Uganda. Thirdly, and perhaps more importantly and more delicate, is the question of a rising, continuing trend of rebellion. Okay? And this is just my preliminary conclusion, because logically speaking, what would an ethnic tribal clash have to do with a police station, with an army installation? Okay? They wouldn't have anything to do with that. But they would attack an army barracks, attack police station. Those will not be ordinarily ethnic crisis. The same thing happened here in Uganda. You remember the police stations that were attacked. And that's why I think the Uganda one was a rebellion, not a riot. In the same measure, what is happening in Western Uganda is a continuing and growing discontent, giving rise to the very fast formation of the rebel group. Because if you look at the history of the rebel group, that's how they start. That's how it bears the hallmark of rebellion, not just ethnic. So those are our preliminary findings. Let me just conclude on this point, and what I think is an important point is the overall structural failure of the national intelligence infrastructure. When I went to northern Uganda, I toured about 6 districts, and I won't tell you which districts because the guys who I spoke to might be upset. I asked the DISOs and ISOs, and I said, what happened? Why is this a problem? Why couldn't you detect this kind of crimes? Especially in some cases, they even had advance notice of what was going to happen. And the DISO took me to it. All these DISOs took me to their offices and showed me their books of accounts. Would you believe it that the district internal security organization officers received 500,000 shillings a month? 500,000 shillings a month to gather intelligence. That's your airtime for a week, I guess. That's your airtime and fuel for a week. Okay? So whereas heavy appropriation is being made to the security sector, it does appear that the people at the very tail end, the DISOs, the PISOs, the VISOs of this world, don't seem to see that money. 500,000 shillings for a DISO who has a network of intelligence officers who ride motorbikes, sometimes have airtime, they can buy is insufficient for this to be able to gather information. So there is that structural problem, and they're unable to find the money trail because security expenditures are classified, and therefore you cannot follow the trail of the money, and who knows where the money ends up. What is certainly true is that the intelligence community is failing down there because they just don't have facilities, don't have the money. During the national consultations on the police, I spoke to a regional intelligence officer of the police in western Uganda, in Kakonge. He was transferred from Kampala. This guy was a teacher. He abandoned the teaching profession, became a police officer, got a master's degree in public administration, and was posted in western Uganda to be a regional intelligence officer for the police. And he had a bicycle for his work, covered an entire region. So he was saying, look, I'm looking for the next opportunity to leave this nonsense of intelligence gathering because it's a waste of time. So that's number one problem. The second problem is what has been a growing fight over who controls intelligence in police. When Kale Kaihura became the IGP, he disbanded special branches. From what we gather, special branch was a very important branch of intelligence gathering. Their deployments were clandestine, were expansive, but they were demobilized in favor of what Kale Kaihura thought was supposed to be the function of the police under CID. So he then expanded CID to mean CIID, Criminal Intelligence Investigation Department. The epics of that conflict emerged during the arrest of the terror suspects in Kampala. You saw how CMI was fighting the police when we were supposed to. That conflict has persisted, and therefore you then have a problem between CMI is now more or less redundant, intelligence functions have been put in the docket of Kale Kaihura and the police and the CIID, and therefore causing a big failure because the police is incapable, the police is under-resourced, under-trained to be able to gather intelligence. And this has led to what you see in town here, but also across the country as increase in crime levels and failure of intelligence. And then lastly, before I send you to sleep, let me just make a comment about the break-ins on NGOs. I sit on the board of the Action Aid Uganda and the Anti-Corruption Coalition Uganda, both of which have been broken into by unknown people. Maybe because I'm there, I don't know. But Action Aid was broken into, and the Anti-Corruption Coalition, that was I think about a few meters from here. They have now since moved. They're also broken into. The striking similarities with the outcome of those break-ins is the mere reluctance or indifference of the police to investigate what happened.
NRN.
Okay? Okay? They just don't want to. Even in cases where there are surveillance cameras having pictures of people walking in, like in the case of I don't know about the paper, but I know about Action Aid. That surveillance cameras show people who are responsible to walk into the place, drop things and store things. The police up to now haven't conclusively finished investigations. So I will stop there and think and conclude by saying the break-ins in NGOs is a much wider problem. My own sense is that it is both likely a state engineered break-ins because all the break-ins targets particular organizations. And in the case of Urinet, they even went and stole flash disks. What would the thief be doing still in the flash disk? What would the thief be doing leaving an LCD, a PowerPoint presentation, what we call that LCD projections? Okay? Leaving a flash screen TV, Samsung, 2-inch, and going to steal a backup server. So the trend indicates, in my view, and might be fun, actions are not criminal, but rather intrusive. And there's the hallmark of people looking for information. I don't know if thieves can look for information. But there are also internal problems. relate to some of these problems, some of the NGOs that are investigating. So thank you for listening to me. Good evening. Thank you very much, Nicholas, for actually the presentation. Because as he stated, that this was a delicate subject, and I believe so. But he has spoken his mind, and which is what we stand for as a think tank. And I think he deserves a big hand clap. We are discussing this subject in good faith as citizens, because as I have stated, the issue of security concerns us all. Katomkasa also was the challenge of his organization being broken. Let him tell us a small story, and then from there we will do it. Mr. Mariano, thank you very much, Mr. Felix, for that discussion, the professor, and the audience. I want to give you a brief about what happened. Makere Chiburu, so report 41, just LDC. It's a level building with a guard, with gate, so we thought it was safe because we have been there for time. Yes. But on the 26th of June, a group of people about came to that office. It was at midnight, we are told, by the security officer who was there. And they claimed to be part of the organization at midnight, entered and accessed the offices. They were stopped and they went and destroyed the signpost, up to the meter, the other side of LDC. A metallic signpost? A metallic signpost, which was well rooted within the ground, cemented. They went out and then out. After destroying it, that was 20th of June. Now, on 7th July, to be exact. You remember there was another election on 20th, but it never entered. They destroyed the signpost. Now on the 26th, now they were able to enter and then took whatever they managed to carry. And what happened is that we found the Askari unconscious in the morning, but they had taken everything that could carry information and begin with that, because they took all the computers, they took even the hard disk that we covered, they call them where we keep our information. They took the projectors, they took some cash, but what they left was a brand new TV, 21-inch LG, and then another brand new refrigerator. They left them, but the computers and software and perhaps what they wanted. So, actually, I concur with you. Why do you leave a brand new? They are new and big, very good looking. They left those ones. They took other items. We are thrown in that kind of state. First of all, you panic. You don't understand what's going on. Then you find a way. You ask yourselves, how are we going to cope? Because they have taken even some money which was supposed to be paid the next day for rent. You understand? So sometimes thieves also have chances of finding you in a bad situation. So it was very alarming. We talked to the police. Remember, even the first time we called the police, who promised to give us security, which they never gave. Even on the second successful robbery now, we reported to the police. They came, they did their funny investigations. Up to now, they have never given us a report. And nothing much actually is happening. For them, once they come and put a ready tape, whatever they call it, and then they say out of bounds, they check, they do what they report, anything. They ask you for receipts which you have given of the items, and then the story will stop there. They took the food and the sodas, because we thought the Askari had been given some investigations, whatever it is. But up to now, they have never given us a report. So, really, we are wondering what was the motive of the case, what is the finding so far, and you cannot actually tell. But as an organization,
we are desirous to move on. There's no way you're going to back out. Though you must find a way of recapping, because you know when they take all that you use, you are remaining with nothing. They took 6 brand new computers and quite a number of things. So, and with a lot of information, what is happening is the information which you have gathered for years. Ours is a leadership organization, as you know it. So we are wondering whether they are targeting the organization or they're targeting the machines. So we don't understand exactly the motive of the things. So it is a bad situation, my brother. We are trying to find our feet, because there's no way we are going to keep on lamenting. It has happened. Otherwise, I know I tell my friends that if it hasn't happened to your side yet, guard your information. If there's a way of taking some information back home, if it is safe, some of us are learning lessons. So the way forward is perhaps to guard yourself adequately with some information backed up here and there. I can't even say that you will an inside job, because someone will say perhaps you have disagreements and all that. No, it's not. We are one team. I wasn't a very big organization. You get it? So we cannot say that someone perhaps wanted to destroy you as a part of the organization. No. To me, I see that we did argue that it must have been a foreign kind of force. Whether they were genuine thieves or not, we cannot tell. But we are suspicious that perhaps there was another hand that came in to destroy the organization. So, finally, let me make my comment. My word is that there are too many guns in private hands in this country. And the government seems to be lax about it. We have security guards who don't have even plates. They have fake plates. I saw this one on TV some time back. We have an influx of guns coming on in the country from Sudan, from Rwanda, from Congo, and we don't know exactly who owns these guns. Of course, we have the security guards who are given guns, actually personnel, people who have guns, masquerading as NRM agents or government officials, to put it more clearly. And no one is accountable to these guns. People are killed, no one is accountable. The police will simply search and it will end there. So we have a problem of too many guns in wrong hands. So to me, if we fix the issue of guns, I don't know whether we can have a way forward. If gun issue can be fixed.
You have one.
And then the issue of course, the rebels. We've been wondering why is that whenever we have an insurgency, we say rebels, after a few weeks, they are not rebels. So we have a security problem in this country, which I think all of us must get concerned. Because that was us, perhaps tomorrow may be yours. Then we don't need to wait for that kind of bad chance to come. We must be alert and guard ourselves. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think it is a very sad story, but in a big way, I want to say we are humble, abundant. Amidst all your heavy schedules have set aside time for us. Let's welcome him again with a big hand clap. With us already is Mr. Nicholas Opio, who has finished his very great presentation, and members clapped seriously. So next is Mr. Arinaitwe from UBC. I hadn't introduced him, he has just arrived. Mr. Arinaitwe is a great Pan-Africanist. Mr. Arinaitwe, you're welcome. And next thing is Prof.Edward Kakonge.
Okay, I'm called Chelsea Maizero from the University of Public Administration. My comment is, you talked about the king, most of the kings being from the army. But according to the history of Uganda kings, Edward Mutesa was in the army. His father was in the army. Like someone last time, it was Colonel Fletcher who said that most of it's too hard for someone to form up a new kingdom, like what you said some time ago about it. So, like, is it possible for someone is it too easy for someone to form a kingdom, as you said some time ago?
Okay, so thank you, Israel. So I hope I haven't lost my count, but let's have Archibald first.
Rather than anything to say on the matters regarding security, I find it unfortunate. It's a funny thing, because I met some people who were telling us the only people in Uganda who can fight for soil in Uganda are the Batwa, the Jefeth, and the Ik, who you have probably never heard of except the Batwa, who are fighting for survival. The rest of us here are descendants of the Acholi, and we are all immigrants. It's just a fact. You know? we may come from different branches of the family, but ultimately it's the same bloody family. You probably don't know this, but Mr. I forget your name. I'm sorry. Nicholas. You probably don't know this, but the ruling families in southern Uganda are actually the ruling families from the north came down and left the people in the north with no rulers and began to establish new dynasties in the south. And it's one of the funny things. But in any case, Sebastian Bastier made a funny statement in the past. He said, when the rulers of the people become a mafia, the population is forced to become Vikings, and they pillage each other for the benefit of their masters. The level of insecurity that is, well, they say it's increasing. I don't know if it's, someone said we need fewer guns in the country. I think when Kano, I think Felix Kolaija was here, I told him what we need is not less guns. This is my opinion, strong opinion. I think we need more guns in our society. Everybody should be given at least, actually not just one gun, but a kit.
For safety.
The only difference with me is that I think every Ugandan should have a minimum training for, I think, a 9 months military course. Finally, number one, we cannot afford to have a military conflict on our soils. We just can't. And since most of you guys here are young and we have illustrious son, yes, we have to drill it in our heads and in the heads of everybody else. We can't afford to have a conflict on Ugandan soil, for the very simple fact that the moment you saw what happened in Western Uganda, as small as that conflict was, the UN sent a contingent. Imagine what would happen if we had the equivalent of the Buganda rebellion today. We shall have Chinese men, we shall have Chinese men manning your streets, you know, Indians patrolling the entire country. And this is going to happen if we are not careful about this. That's number one. Number two, the final thing that I think we have to understand, appreciate about things to do with security. Ultimately, what we are fighting for is the distribution of resources. There are more constructive ways to do that than opting for violence. And we can speculate on why his thing was robbed, which sometimes is actually vandalism, not that yours was. But even the fact that they feel the need to rob from NGOs is a sign of panic.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Point of order suspended. We want him to conclude.
I want to finish. Our society, people have spoken so much about war, and I am actually saddened that the president keeps taunting people. You come and you see what you can do. It's unfortunate. We have spoken so much about war that we are creating a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's time we tone down on the militant rhetoric, because when bullets start flying around, they will not discriminate.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
We'll speak. Can we have Opio?
Thank you so much, Shama. Me, in fact, 1 minute is more than enough. Yes, my name is Opio. I'm from Nakawa, and I'm an FDC member from Nakawa. It's my first time to be here. I'm so much blessed to be here.
I hope everybody can hear you.
No. Yeah, thank you so much, Shama. One of my concerns about the way forward, one of the way forward about security. These policemen have not been empowered, especially in the countryside. Whenever there's an incident, you see the IGP going to Kakonge. Whenever there's an incident in Kakonge, in Kayunga, it's the IGP going there. So I'm wondering, what's the work of the DPCs? The DPCs, all regional police commanders, have not been empowered to do their work. So you find that you're a DPC or particular district, but you feel you don't have powers. They're just like, should I call them bulldogs or maybe a white elephant? You're all DPC of Banana district, but you don't have powers. You have to wait for the IGP to come all the way from she will bully or what. So we feel like it's not empowered. Then we are forgetting the food insecurity. People are so poor with hearts. People are so poor. People are eating lunch by accident. People don't have food. And we are trying to post our sign and we think maybe security is about guns and arrows and bows. People don't have what to eat. People don't have food. They come from Nakawa, I know. Yes, as I'm winding up, the last one is about the president keeps on presenting over kingdoms and kings. I don't know why he doesn't ask himself why in Angola don't have the kingdom and the king. I mean, we are creating small kingdoms, but the big and entire Angola, big as it is, there's no king and the king. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. So thank you. Shall we have Jose? Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity. What you're talking about is very pertinent because it concerns our lives. We're talking about rising crime. Just last the previous weekend, I went and buried in Kayonga someone who had been hit by Katayimba guys, a very close friend of ours. And any one of us could be a victim. So we should take this debate very serious. What we should be asking ourselves is, when was the last time the police successfully investigated and helped prosecute a case successfully? We should set things as they are. What don't we know that this police is more bent on regime protection? That all the resources they get are geared towards tear gas and, whenever the IDP goes to parliament to ask for more funds, he already says, for instance, the last time I was there, he wants to recruit police officers for the next election. He never tell you he's recruiting police officers for crime prevention or fighting crime. So we are in a very precarious situation. In fact, I'm going to say things as they are. It has become a common norm that under General Kaihura, he always is lucky that whenever there are serious cases, there is people who are always willing to come out and say, I did this. When a general dies, there's always someone to claim I killed that person. When the Masero were burnt, there was someone to say burnt them. Not police using forensics, fingerprints to bring out the suspect and prosecute successfully. So, now, just this week, you've just seen a case where the head of the CIID is acting as a witness against the state. You just imagine what is happening in this country.
And its influx in this country, and I think maybe General Tumwine can help us on taking this information to where we might not reach ourselves. Then too, we realize that there is a problem of funding intelligence gathering bodies in this country. We heard that the district receives as low as 500,000 Uganda shillings to collect information for a full month, which I think is very unfortunate. I don't think. Yes, we had a recent problem in the Rwenzori region, but really we don't have major security problem in this country, according to me. Usually in societies there are always conflicts.
Is that an opinion or?
Yes, I said according to me. Yeah, I don't think it's something out of proportion really to say that we should get scared to that level. There are pockets of conflict and insecurities which are not major according to me, save what took place in the Rwenzori region. I thank you so much.
That woman with the gender person speak. Sharon. There is a person called gender.
I'm very proud of that lawyer. Just because he's, I don't want to say that, but I know he's brilliant, he deserves better. So I need to talk about the last caller, the last person who spoke, to say that these gentlemen should not say that jobless brotherhood. I'm so shocked in this democratic country where these innocent men are just sitting here to be part of a group. Our constitution talks about freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and then someone sends a threat and says, if these guys come here, that it's a threat. If there is so much a threat that we don't know about, then let this place close. I'm not denying that this speaker can be having information which I don't have. If it's too risky for us to associate with other people, then it's best that the place is closed. But we shall not discriminate against individuals because the Constitution grants that. I'm speaking as a lawyer. I don't have any political party, but I want everyone to follow the rule of law. If it's that risky, then close it, but don't discriminate against individuals.
Also appreciate it.
Our chief guest speak to us, and thereafter we shall continue with the discussion.
When did you become
Please, let's now organize ourselves and be attending to your
Thank you. Good evening, Pan-Africanists. Sorry to have missed the first part. It was very crucial. Our brother Opio, but all of you have said that his contribution was good. And I wanted to share from the audience so that I could pick up the issues that you are discussing, and I don't have to restrict myself to what I had in mind, but what you are responding to. First and foremost, the subject that was given for this evening of security is a matter that touches my heart, my profession, and my life commitment of freedom fighting. I am happy to say that at least we have a place like this club where we have free minds, where people are free to express themselves freely in a family community, and in a family that is willing to listen to everyone from his or her point of view. Now, on the issue of security, I think we have achieved quite a lot, and we have also learned quite a lot. I want to first of all bring you, I found you discussing monarchies and kingdoms and in relation to security. I've been reading different books of recent on democracy, and amazingly, many writers are coming up with deep analysis of what are the causes of insecurity in the world today in relation to democracy. And one, there's a book called Democracy, the God That Failed. Actually, it's called Democracy or Liberty, the God That Failed, by Opio, H-O-P-E. You could Google it. In his analysis, he actually says that monarchies are less evil than democracy. Go and read that book.
By who?
Opio, H-O-P-E. Democracy, the God That Failed. And then there is another one by Michael Parenti called Democracy for the Few. And he also analyzes how democracy is the source of insecurity in the world.
Yes.
And he analyzes it deeply and finds out that actually the present applied democracy of the world is just a monopoly of a few people in the world who are in charge of the resources of the world. Right from 1776, he brings out how they would elect members of parliament in California, in most of the states in the United States. The list, you at least have you to be elected, you had to have at least £5,000 at that time for you to be eligible to be elected. So it was based on how wealthy you were, and how the whole democracy that we are talking about now is about the protection of property by the rich away from the majority who are not part of the whole process. So that is just a general observation I want you to think about. That democracy now is actually called, that is the one which is responsible for insecurity in the world. And therefore, we need to look at what are the tenets that we are talking about. First of all, it brings out issues, freedom and unity. In the political systems that we have in the world, there is no party system, which people don't want to believe it is there, like what we call the movement system. There is the one-party system, which actually we even had one of the parties here was pushing for one-party system, Kawaka Yeka. The multi-party system and totalitarianism, where there is dictatorship like in military coups. Now, under all those systems, every system is trying to claim that it is the one which provides security. Because you know, some of you are discussing things emotionally sometimes, and we need to sit down and see where have we come from, where are we, where do we want to go, and how do we want to go there. For your interest, what kept us the 5 years we spent in the bush, for your information, why I left this club and why I take interest sometimes to come, is that the 5 years we spent there were the best university I have ever been to. Why? Because we had enough time, day in, day out, night in, night out, to sit down like we have sat here together, concentrate on thinking about the future of Uganda. And it helped us. We were able to synthesize and tune our minds towards the future. And that's what I want us to do. So I'm bringing this background to give you what is the relevance to present security. Under all those systems, one thing remains constant. The constant is there is a need for authority. Every human being lives under authority and is also in charge. At the level of the family, you are head of the family, you are in authority. And you should exercise that authority. At the level of business, you are the head of a business, you are in charge. Without corruption. You have authority. At the level of the church, there is authority above you. Somebody is called the archbishop or pope or whoever, or the sheikh. Then at the nation, there is some authority. Somebody is head of the state. So you are sometimes twice in authority and 3 times out. Of course, the third one and the highest is God. Now, in every situation, at every time, in relation to security, authority is that one, is that authority which can provide security for all and is responsible for that. In this particular case, under the kingdoms, the king was in charge of security for his people. By the way, by the time the colonialists came here, Uganda had more than 10,000 armed people who were trained, regimented as soldiers to defend the kingdom. And all other kingdoms had their own armies. When we got independence, the conflict that started there was using the British colonial army in the making to govern Ugandans. And as a result, when the Ugandan leaders wanted to take charge of those forces, the forces turned against them. When Opio wanted to exercise his power as the president, first when Kabaka wanted to use his position as president, the prime minister used his relationship, because he was connected with the colonialists, he liaised with the armed forces and they threw out the king. After that, the forces threw out the Obote himself. After that, the other forces threw out Amin himself. Now, the reliance on this and the changing of these forces, in the process, I found you talking about guns. In the process, guns became in the hands of different groups that were not under the same authority. I want you to keep remembering these words. Now, all that we have been doing since 1986 has been to establish authority over the guns first, establish authority in every area. And how did it come about? It came about by a systematic approach of involving every Ugandan, democratizing the guns. Some of you are still very young, but you know that from 86 to about 2006, there was this activity under the movement system. There was something called LDU. Everybody was free to train. And we trained old men and young ones everywhere in every district. And we said every Ugandan has the responsibility to take care of his or her own security. And therefore, that democratization of the gun, because you don't fear the existence of guns everywhere, that is no longer afraid. Because the majority of the people know how to use the gun anyway. You can no longer intimidate them with your gun. Whether you have it or you don't have it, it's no longer afraid. Anybody can access a gun. That democratization of the gun was the best guarantee against dictatorship, because it proved that anybody who has ideas in his head of thinking of grabbing, of using the gun for a coup, better know that there are enough guns in the country which could be put together against him. Or that the people should have the courage and confidence, and that's what I want to tell you. The people should have the courage and confidence to say, you can't do it. That process was interrupted by the change of the political system. Much of the insecurity that is there, by the way, if I may tell you, is more internal than external. Actually, if I may tell you, to me, the biggest source of insecurity now is corruption. Where somebody commits a crime, or somebody who should have been apprehended is bought out by money, or somebody uses corrupt means to protect him or her. Even some of the, I found you talking about intelligence. When we had, and I'm telling you from experience, we never trained so many people in intelligence during the bush. The biggest intelligence power was from the population. Vigilance, we had 3 words: constant vigilance, constant mobility, and constant suspicion. First, constant suspicion, constant vigilance, and constant mobility. Of course, when you are gorillas, you have to keep moving. But the first 2, constant suspicion. You suspect every person to commit a crime, including the president. He may want to commit suicide himself. Watch him. And if you are the one guarding, ensure he doesn't, because he's the president of Uganda. You should not allow him to commit suicide. If he wanted, he was one time held at the gate by his guard when he wanted to go jogging. And the guard was right. He said, I have no order from the chief, from my commander, to allow you to get out, sir. You know? No! He was promoted because he was strict on his work. Right. You see? So, I am telling you that constant suspicion is a result of awareness. You must have the eyes, first of all, for you to know. Even in my Kakonge Volunteers and Corruption Campaign Africa, we teach, we say, for you to be able to fight corruption, you must first understand what is corruption, how corruption takes place, and how you are able to fight it. So, similarly, for all Ugandans to be security conscious, especially now under the threat of Al-Shabaab and terrorism, we need first and foremost, because you are talking of way forward, and I wanted actually to lay much more emphasis on that for you to be aware, and we push for it. What would I say that will bring security? There is one way. People do not do what they should, they do what they understand. Until Ugandans understand how important security is for them, and how responsible each person is supposed to be involved in security, we shall not have security. And that's why I was telling you, the process we had reached of democratizing the gun, of making everybody confident, of taking everybody from chaka, of telling people the history, because during that period, we would tell Ugandans where we have come from, where we are, where we want to go, and how we want to go there. But what is important, and I want to emphasize, be it in the legislature, in the judiciary, be it in the executive, be it in the civil society, be it everywhere, what is lacking and what is important for security is first and foremost established authority, second, understanding of the people, third, now we go to resources. I found you discussing the issue of how much is given to security. What is the budget for UPDF? What is the budget for the police? What is the budget for the prisons? How are they facilitated to do their work? I can tell you our experience. When we had less resources, we relied more on the people. When you get in government and get resources, you rely more on these trained people. And there's a tendency to abandon the public. You get the point? And rely on the, police. The police that gets you on the roadblock gets the unfortunate ones. The majority of the criminals are at large. The unlucky ones are the ones who are got on the roadblock.
Even the army.
Of course. But the real police is the police of the mind. That's where the churches, the religious institutions, the mosques, the what, play a much bigger role in security. And that's why I want to emphasize the point of the role of everybody. This going to church every day and they tell you to pray. This prayer which you pray that I like it better than Yankori. If a person turns from his sins and does what is right, he will save his life from danger. That repeated Sunday thing.
Even make the Acholi one, because we were in Acholi.
How do you say it in Acholi?
Garong dano balo, mirdong tiko mere,
like that. That regular repetition. That regular repetition is very important because it keeps appealing to the police of the mind. And that's why I was telling you, understanding why we need security, understanding how we should get security, understanding how each of us has a role to play in security is more important than even the money we give to these for buying tear gas and for buying these things which come too late. It's like medicine. You who like doctors and who might be trying to become medical doctors, these medical doctors are not trained about health. They are trained about medicine. You go to them when the situation is already too late. You are already sick, my friend. They are only trying to delay your death. But for sure, you will die. Now, the same with security. By the time the enemy plans, organizes, prepares, arms himself, and comes to kill people, that means that there was no public health. There was no disease prevention. There was no intelligence. There was no vigilance. There was no
reconnaissance.
That comes even later. You see, you find that reliance on these forces or security forces sometimes comes in too late when the situation, somebody has already died.
Post-mortem.
You are all pathologists, you become pathologists who deal with post-mortem. You are looking for what killed the person rather than working on preventing the person from dying. So the emphasis should be, how do we prevent on the issue of security? How do we prevent a situation coming around? How do we organize ourselves? Because the future belongs to the organizer. How do we organize ourselves starting from our village? How should the villagers organize themselves to be vigilant,
to know who is in the area. In the past, there was something called Mayumba Kumi. Do you remember? For anybody to sleep in your area had to be received and recorded by the Mayumba Kumi, the cell, the chairman. When we introduced the RCs were very effective. They were supposed, according to the NRM statute of 1988, they were supposed to meet at least once a month, and they could meet as many times as possible. And they had authority even to vote out the chairman at that meeting and bring in another one. That was real democracy. That was real democracy at the grassroots. And authority and power was with the people. And that's why they could even have their defense person, they could change him and put another one. And they were in charge of their own security. When we went to multipartyism, the committee of 9, which was remaining, was abandoned, and it's only left the chairman with his stamp. These days, that's what is there. The other day, in our Kakonge meeting, one brother testified that his brother, who is chairman, was traveling. And then his wife said, "Where is money for food?" The chairman went in his room and brought the stamp and said, "This is you keep the stamp," telling his wife, "But my brother will sign for you. Whoever you stamp, 10,000. And that is your food." Now, that's how far it has gone. I can assure you, even a security dangerous, a person with a danger security can easily get a stamp for 10,000 and get away with it. That's why I'm telling you to bring it very simple on the ground, that the biggest threat to the security now is lack of vigilance because of corruption, and lack of vigilance because of relaxation. There is also too much wealth. You are talking about employment. The feeling of poverty in the minds is creating more anarchy than wealth, because people want the shortcut. An old man recently was at a wedding.
I agree with you.
And he said, "You generation, you young people," he said he was telling his grandson who was wedding, and said, "Me, I did not study English, but I was taught 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I am told that these days you are talking of one wife, 2 children, 3-bedroomed house, 4-wheel drive, and you want to drive in gear number 5. And I want to tell you, you will crash if you move like that." He says, "Me, I don't drive in gear number 5 because as an old man, I am careful." Now, that attitude of gear number 5 is more a danger to security than guns. By the way, do you know that a gun is less dangerous than the pain of somebody?
True.
The people who are signing death sentences, the people who are causing the highest corruption are using, and how much resources are being lost? Huge. Is it by guns? No, the gun can take away your life, but also a pen can take away many lives. So I want to tell you that for Africa to survive and to be secure, we must start from what made it possible for us to remain as united, as strong, and survive all the vagaries, all the efforts to destroy us. What was the magic? The family. And I'm starting from there and ending there. Security starts from the family. Morality starts from the family. Unity starts from the family. Freedom of expression starts from the family. The moment the family unit is threatened and is destroyed, you have no country. And that's why we should focus. And I want to tell you that unless we have time put aside for us to discuss about security at every level, starting from the family, we shall have more and more insecurity. As long as we don't concretize the importance of talking to every family and telling them that it is the responsibility for everyone to be vigilant, to watch out, to look for what could go wrong, to whoever sees who throws something there. These days with bombs, who steps where? Why Israel up to now has survived, it's with us being a small country surrounded by opponents. You know, they have been fighting since time immemorial. For them, before the Bible was written, there were wars in Israel up to now. As we speak tonight, they are still fighting. Everyone is trained. Everyone is part of the security system. So I thought that if we talk about security, don't just wait. What happens in the West is Solomon in the Bible says, what is happening has always happened, has happened many times before. Nothing new. But for our time, for our generation, I am happy to say that if Uganda has achieved anything in the last 30 years, is an effort to establish relative security. You know the word, all these things you say, good, bad, better, bad, is relative according to psychology. As compared to what? So what we can say is that in the last 30 years, we have been building than anything else. That one is undisputable. That we have been trying to build a good security base on which we can build, but it is not enough.
Correct.
Yesterday I was reading about the parable of the mustard seed. The commentary said that the meaning of the mustard seed is about growth and big things. When things become big,
growth and development,
birds of the air start coming, patching, rotting starts to come in, dropping of leaves starts to come in. There is always a degeneration. So as we grow, we should expect those. We even have what we call problems of success. What I want to advise is, let's start from, recently we were having a discussion and the doctor said that a professor was told that when things get complicated, go back to the basics. Yes. When things get complicated, we go where? Africans, when situations come up, let us go back to some of the values in Africa. What has kept us together? In spite of all this, it has been the family. It has been our closeness. It has been community sharing. It has been participation. It has been being frank, not fearing the eyes of somebody. When you're going to have a word, it should not come from me. Let it come from somebody else when he's fearing to report what is wrong. That is dangerous for security. Somebody sees a mistake, somebody sees somebody is stealing, somebody sees there could be danger, he says, banan. Let it not come from me. He waits that government will dream about it and help the police, and the police will help you. I want to end by saying, I want to encourage you all to join the armed forces. We should all, actually, I can say, we should all participate. That's how I want to end. Let's go back to the basics. Start from the family, discuss security, talk about it. That's when security will be in plenty everywhere. Discuss it in bars, discuss it in meetings, discuss it in school, and be vigilant. Constant suspicion, constant vigilance. God bless you.
So, thank you very much, Afande. Thank you very much for giving me this chance. General, I'm Peter Wanguru. What we are discussing here can make history, especially to our next generations. I am one of the people who have, I think you have known me already, but I would not just come here and keep quiet or not say what the difficulties we are getting. I belong to the Pan-African movement in the former church of Namtebi at Naguru. But what is happening there is a miracle. It makes me think of committing suicide.
Don't.
I said this, and may I have told you this before. I proved 6 times during Amin that I was the key youth who convinced the leaders to start that organization you hear. OAU, now it is African Union. But the way I'm treated there, my dear, they go to the extent of chasing me out of the office when I bring a suggestion. The visitors come here, there, and then they don't allow them to speak to me. This is one of the reasons why I say I will never continue to keep quiet and not say to my people. And during 77, I was arrested 5 times when I pleaded for the lives of the 12 people who were killed at the clock tower. But the police had already known me. And that's why I wonder very much. Most of you, some of you know me very well. And they knew me. Now, whenever it was taken, they said, we kill somebody else. But now I say, please, let us not just come here to give fine speeches. Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
On that note, you have 1 minute to say.
I think ladies and gentlemen, but most importantly, General Elly Tumwine. You know, he's 1 in a million in this Uganda that I admire a lot and that I still admire. Chairperson, you talked of security and the way forward. That's where I would put my 1 minute. On the 17th last month, I and Manager Robert, I'm no man to Muhimbisi, we are the ones who went to Parliament to protest with the pigs.
Oh, the pigs.
Me and him. The pig protesters at Parliament. We achieved 2 things. That these gentlemen, most importantly, General Tumwine had brought in as far as security is concerned. They say an idle rabbit jumps, but an idle youth commits crimes. We're talking about youth employment, minus all these people of our age being employed, trouble. If we were evil-hearted on that day, the entire nation would be mourning concerning what happened at Parliament, assuming that these pigs were bombs. To be honest, assuming they were bad-hearted, like those brothers who took part in the Lugogo bombings, how much money were they paid in any case? So, General, I know you sit at that high table with the High Command and others. There is a big problem with the youth. You see them here, they are looking 70 at 20s, as some people look 20s at 80s. I wish, General, all the people there were speaking like you. I suppose this country will
I don't know something like him actually.
Yeah, true. And I'm yet to recruit him this time, not him to recruit me. In the Jobless Brotherhood, we are promoting zero tolerance to corruption. That's why we speak to Parliament to show how greedy and corrupt these people are.
You can find a very long queue of cars trying to get some fuel, yet they have a lot of oil. But because America, it's a very big, security threat in the world. And maybe the other issue is about these NGOs in Uganda and maybe in Africa. There are NGOs which are actually promoting insecurity, like this USAID of the Americans. It's just full of intelligence, the American intelligence. And actually, some time back, the White House was apologizing to the Pakistanis that they were using immunization to actually do some kind of spying in Pakistan. And they were actually hiding in the immunization campaigns. Now, we have many NGOs here in Uganda, and actually they are doing a lot of spying for them. But when they come, we welcome them, we just become excited to see them, and maybe they give us some money to sponsor some activities. So I think we need a lot of vigilance, and maybe we need to be informed as far as this issue of NGOs is concerned. There is some organization called Blackwater in Uganda. It's actually for the Americans, and they do things regarding oil and we have them here so far. There is some bad NGO in the hospitals, and one is in Morocco there, and they are busy actually killing people when we are unaware. So there is a lot of security, and maybe in the way forward we need to mobilize our populations in Uganda and the whole of Africa to get to read and maybe to know these NGOs, and we see how to avoid them and maybe fight against them. Thank you very much.
I was listening very much to Mr. Opio submission. It was very good. There is one thing that I concur with the general. Much as we talk about everything, the family is the basis of everything. These people, they normally get that such and such a child has gone for rebellism. When you trace very well, you'll find out that there is a problem in the family. So whenever we are talking about security, there is one reason as to why, General, I came up with that, because he was talking about shadow RDs. Shadow RDs, when you go to Article 203, subsection 3, it's to place very well the roles of RDCs. But there is one major problem that we are facing today. You become an RDC, who is supposed to be the chairperson of the security committee of the district, but when actually you, the RDC, you don't even understand security. That is very, very bad. And some of us who come as shadow RDC, these are the things that we are coming out to highlight those people. Before you become an RDC, one of the perspectives, like long ago during the movement system, we had stability here, simply because the special district administrators, by then called the SDA, majority of them were soldiers. And by the time, no, I'm saying that during that time, the element of security was very much paramount. And today, as I conclude this matter, you'll find out that instead of somebody chairing the security committee, he's thinking about making money. And you remember very well, the government came up with the proposal of the barazas. Are you knowing that even the barazas are failing, yet these people are there? And on the baraza recently in my place there, Kaliro, there was a minor security meeting which was taking place. An individual just came and chopped up the head of the chairperson, and he disappeared. And you think that was Security Council? So what I'm saying is this, that whenever we are talking about security, security begins with you, yourself. There is no way we are going to talk about security when actually, General, there is no way we are going to talk about security when you don't begin security by yourself before you can spread it to others. I conclude this matter by saying that members who are here, there is no way we shall prosper in Pan-Africanism when there is no security. Let us go down to the grassroots, educate the masses, whether in schools or in communities, the way how to become secure. I'm very much obliged to this chance that I'm going to take up this general as a shadow RDC. Any RDC who is not going to work properly, especially in the issues of security, I'm with him. Thank you very much.
Okay, bring the mic. Thank you. We shall now have the conclusion beginning of this.
Thank you very much for your contribution. My young lawyer, thank you very much. From what I've heard, I think we need a session which I'm going to give, so that you acquire some skills. Because your security is extremely important, and you are the person to take charge of it, not others. So it's very, very important to realize that your security is your prime duty, not others. Because I see a number of people. For example, I've seen ladies driving at night with their windows down. With their windows down. That is, you're actually calling insecurity. You're causing yourself insecurity. So really, it is you to be in charge of insecurity. The other systems are second systems. Yeah, he knows.
So thank you, Professor. Let's now hear from
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and Tumwine, thank you. I can assure you, it has been at the back of my mind in other ways. When I found you talking about the security around ourselves, immediately I looked at the insecurity in nutrition. And you know what you become what you eat. We are in great danger. Sometimes ignorance is good. Because if you knew the intensity of the danger we are in, I can assure you, you wouldn't be here talking the way you are talking. Today, we have now 8-year-olds, 10-year-olds suffering and dying from cancer, from diabetes, from hypertension, and we keep going on, looking on. Actually, we are in great, great danger. I was telling the students at St. Lawrence, I said that if you knew the situation, the cycle, the circumlocuous cycle you are in, you would today walk here and through the city demonstrating to Chambo at NCDC. I can assure you, somebody said shadows. We are shadows of our own selves. But the danger is that we do not know who and where we are. It's not politicking, it's not legislation. The problem is education. Whether you like it or not, you can have rallies, you can have workshops, you can talk time on end. But until you teach people who they are, you are lost. We can talk English sometimes better than the English themselves. But who are we? You must think twice. If you look at the whole spectrum of operations in our daily lives, we are all working at symptomatic level. We're just reacting to symptoms. Somebody is sick, yes, medicine. There's no money here, yes, give them a donation. Give them money. Nobody is sitting back. And I have been thinking very, very seriously. I was brought forth into the fray by Dr. Gerokuba. But if you think the law of science, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And there is nothing that happens without a cause. But we are told never to look at the cause at all. The education we engender clearly and thoroughly puts us in a situation of never looking at the cause. We are very happy to react to the symptoms in every form. Whether it is the defense, we get the guns and fight. We do not ask ourselves why. The man who started the police, Ivan Ho, and you were talking about vigilance. When it became so insecure in Britain, Ivan Ho had to, invigorate neighbors about security. And indeed, when neighbors became aware of insecurity around them, they ended up forming police. But they started from there, and security reigned. So I'd like to request that as we go, think about who you are. The biggest danger is that we do not know where we are coming from. do not know our history. The history that is written for us is intended to blindfold us. That's all. The real history is never told at all. Because if you knew the real history, where we're coming from, even this the fighting against ourselves, we wouldn't fight. We are fighting because we don't know where we have come from, neither do we know where we are going. And for sure, we are not sure of where we are going. So I like to thank you. We shall have more time to...
Because you said you have given
exchange.
So you give a book to be read.
But again, once I thank you for listening.
No, you should read.
When I came here, I didn't know that General had problems with lawyers. If I knew, I would not have come. But General is right, and I understand you. When your lawyers are Nyombi and Makubia, the incredible young lawyers out there who are very honest, doing a good job, promoting the rule of law, which you fought for, and justice.
Good previous lawyers.
But let me just make very briefly 4 points, and I want to start from the point. I forget your name, sir. You talked about NGOs. And yes, NGOs are USID and stuff like that. Yeah, Onesmus. Onesmus 15 years ago was a night commuter. If you know what night commuters were. These were young children who were walking 10 kilometers to sleep on street verandas to avoid abduction by the LRA. Okay? And then I do remember very well that I'm alive because of food supplies given by the USAID that you are giving. Tins of cooking oil in sacks of water that had USAID from the American people were my diet. Yes. I haven't died, so I don't know if they mean well or they don't mean well. I think that's part of the growing sentiment informing the increasing constriction of NGO space, the suspicion of Western NGOs and local NGOs and what their objectives are. So we can interrogate that matter and discuss it. Now, in terms of way forward, I suggest 3 things. The first is the democratization of the security sector. Beyond what General suggests, teaching people military skills, making the gun known to people and giving people guns, and somebody suggested arming everybody else. I think we need to democratize that sector in a much more substantive way by making it accountable to the people in this country. Because everybody shudders if the use of the gun by security personnel in a way that breaks the law go unpunished. Up to now, I know for a fact the person who shot and killed the person called Yumbe, not in the bush, not anywhere else, but at Gulu's Central Prison. He was promoted. Such impunity by people who hold the gun and wear the uniform, the decorated uniform that our men and women are supposed to wear, creates a sense of despair, a sense of insecurity. I want to address that. Secondly, at that level as well, you must make the army accountable in the sense that it is subservient and subservient to the people. That's the best way we can ensure security, that the army knows that it serves the people and serves the people only. If we do that, and I think there are attempts to make the army accountable, if we do that in a more substantive manner beyond just training, perhaps we can ensure meaningful security. The second point in terms of where we need to on the way forward is to, in my view, this country needs more peace generals than war generals. General, you've done a good job in liberating this country. I think we need to let you retire and enjoy the fruits of your success. People who promote peace as opposed to promoting war must give way to peace generals. To me, that is an important point. Because people who fought in the bush have never moved away from that mentality. They keep reminding us we were in the bush, we were in the bush. We know you're grateful, you want to take this country forward, and we've got to move beyond reminding us of our history, but concentrating on achieving the future we all want to have as a country. Lastly, and I want to tell you this, perhaps I haven't told people, is that there's a crisis of identity. I think beyond just the form of what we wear, neckties and suits, the African people must begin to define particular African identity. I'm traveling next month to the US Africa Summit in DC. My key message, if I have the chance to speak as I'm scheduled to do, is to define an African identity at that meeting. Beyond just issues of uniforms, shirts, neckties, I think we need to have an African mindset and African identity. And this is the crisis of identity. Let me tell you, when President Museveni was signing the anti-homosexuality law in Entebbe, and harping about African identity, African values, African independence, bank governors from across the African continent were negotiating loans on the same day in Washington, D.C. with Jim King, the World Bank's president. I don't know what message that sends, but I think we've got to define the African identity. And I want to recommend one book for your reading if you like to read. There's a book by a lady called Naomi Klein, The Shock Doctrine. The thirst of Western capitalism and its attempt to capture the world is very clearly defined in that book. They're very consistent, they're very calculative. The shock doctrine by Naomi Klein. Naomi Klein. Klein is Klein. It's a useful book to read. Many of you perhaps don't know about the Chicago School of Economics. And there are more than 100 years or so of spreading Western capitalism across the world using shock doctrines and shock policies. So please read that book. Lastly, and by no means any least, to my learned colleagues, thank you very much for your kind words. I think that John Doe can see that there are young lawyers who are still honest and serving the cause. I thank you very much.
The honesty is subject to scrutiny also.
Thank you very much. So we shall have the last comments from our panel.
Well, I don't want to hold you further. I like this forum very much. And I like the marked dimensions that come in of the discussions that we hold here, because you get from different minds and backgrounds. I'd just like to comment in the conclusion on this subject which we have been discussing, that we spend a lot of time on things like individuals. I think let's avoid talking about individuals. Let's talk about principles and values and ideals. What are the right principles? What are the right ideals rather than individuals? The question of whether General Tumwine is retired or not retired doesn't make sense, because you could move from the saucepan and go to the real fire. Now, we've been studying stable countries of the world. What were the issues? What made some of these countries remain stable and will emerge now? Because everything is tested by time. Over the last 50 years, the last half decade, what countries have advanced in human terms, in technology, in organization, and in real wealth? And amazingly, I can give you 3 examples. Whether you like it or not, it is China, China. Because of Kim Il-sung. Whether you like it or you don't like it, as we speak today, China has caught up as the second richest country in the world, next to America, and is going to throw America out in the next 10 years, inevitably and agreeably by even the Americans themselves, because of organizing their people. The capitalist countries, number one is the United States with 15 trillion, which is 100% of their GDP. Number two is Japan with 13 trillion, which is 228% of their GDP. Okay, 229. A trillion US dollars. Third is Germany, then France, then UK, Italy,
Luxembourg,
Greece, Ireland, UK, and in that order, the top capitalist countries are the most indebted. And why? Because of the danger. You know, somebody was worried that this curse of oil, of resources, is it going to cause a problem? I want to assure you that it's good to learn from the mistakes of others. There are countries which have oil but have prospered, like Norway. And Uganda has taken a lot of interest in what did Norway do, not to have the oil curse. And we can confidently, if we are conscious, you know, don't fear to sleep because you may dream. When Yankore said, no, don't fear to sleep because you may dream. Don't fear to sleep because you may dream. So we should not fear to do what is necessary just because some people made mistakes, or that we may make mistakes. Let's learn from the mistakes and move forward. The same with security. Let's not be despondent. Let's not think that the situation is out of hand just because there are a few indisciplined people within the forces or within the community. Let's organize. The future belongs to the organizer. Do not organize?
organize.
Organize. That's the only way forward. I don't want to take more time, and we organize at all levels. As I said, starting from the family and going to the education system, which in the Arinaitwe was pointing out. And nobody, you know, talking about science, I repeat this law of Newton on the law of motion. We have scientists here, those who did physics. It says that an object will remain in its former state until an external force is exerted on it. Situations will remain as they are until there are some people who are organized to change them.
All we need is a better team. Let's increase our team so that you are committed and willing to share with the young people, and that's where our future will lie. Whether me I sleep, whether I retire, my security is in the young people knowing what to do in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I want to say that this one, we shouldn't just do it. You know, in meetings there is a formal way of ending, and it's always thanking. And I want to say that this one we should do it exceptionally. That we thank Afande and the panelists for the constant knowledge that we have always shared, which I think is doing a lot in transforming us. Let us thank them in a unique way by a very big hand clap.
Thank you very much. We meet next week at 1. Thank you.
The problem with you,